Well, my name is Marianne Krogh. I'm an art historian, so my background is with the visual arts. And as you said, I've been working in Studio Olaf Eliasson for many, many years. I don't do that anymore, but I do different curatorial works, and I also work as an editor in a publishing house doing books on architecture and art. And actually, I also have a PhD from the School of Architecture. So I normally work within sort of the cross-disciplinary fields of architecture and visual arts. There is actually a special moment that started or sparkled off the idea of doing this exhibition of connectedness. And that is that I, one summer, a couple of years ago, went to a demonstration in the center of Copenhagen, in the town hall square, where an author called Josephine Klogaard had a speech in protest of building on the last uninhabited so-called wild area in very close to the capital, called Amagerfællet. And Josephine had the reflection that we Westerners, for centuries, through enlightenment, rationality, education, and control, that we have distanced ourselves more and more from our natural surroundings to such a degree that we can hardly feel anymore that we indeed have a very close and vital relation to our habitat. We are embedded in it, to other people, to animals, to plants, to everything living, and to Earth. And just the use of the word nature reveals, you could say, the otherness that we use in order to talk about our surroundings through our gaze, our words, our consciousness, through history. And Josephine, this author, she concluded that if we instead were able to feel this connectedness which exists between us and our surroundings, and that could be natural and artificial, then maybe we wouldn't have to gather that summer day in front of the town hall in Copenhagen and protest or fight for the last piece of open land in the city. And she also said that this missing feeling of connectedness, well, she characterized it with the words loss and sorrow. And then I thought, having heard that speech, that here is something really interesting. And I thought that if there is something which can deal with this and encompass this and discuss this, it is architecture. It is so fundamental and deals with sort of the existential basic condition of settling down on Earth, and it's also using very refined tools and inventions and cultural artifacts. So this was sort of the starting idea. And then I went to the studio Lundgaard Tranberg in Copenhagen and asked them if they wanted to make an exhibition about this. And I was not interested in an exhibition with a lot of textual and visual information on explanatory boards all over, and having models referring to something outside, referring yet to something else, and so on. I asked them because they are eminent in their practicing the phenomenological experience, you could say. And because this is all about sort of a common denominator for all life, movement, processes, energy, pulse, sensations, co-creations. And this is something that I think that they work a lot with throughout the different buildings and practices. So this is actually the beginning of the process, you could say.
Yeah, and that was actually a wonderful invitation. We were at the same time also engaged in this discussion in Denmark, taking part in bringing in new developments in that specific place in one of our reserves. We call it the lung of Copenhagen, the green lung of Copenhagen, and we started talking about this, and my partner Erik, who also have been a part of the studio way back. We settled the studio back in '85, so we are brought up people. We are a bit old in the business here, and we are now a big partnership, which always have lied in our views on architecture, that we know that all what you do is a collaboration, and you are so dependent on other people to bring things to happen. And we have in the studio always been engaged in teaching. My former partner Boye, who was the co-founder of the studio, he was a professor in building technology in the university or the School of Architecture. The thoughts that we have has always been based on the idea of constructing, that it should be something that was a part of our world, that could rest, that could stand, that could last for a long time. The word sustainability have always been within our hearts without using it so directly as we use it today, because it's normal for us. It's just a condition, it's a premise. You can't construct without being within that understanding. But the wonderful thing is that the studio now is a big collaboration of people. We are now 17 partners. Out of about 60 employees, which also have been there for a long time. And we do engage in a lot of things. We do the whole span of architecture, from the very start, planning structures, infrastructures, to the various design within the buildings. And also we engage in the arts. And therefore I also know Marianne from way back, that we were discussing the influence and inspiration of working with artists. We've always been doing that for a long time. And also we have to present Finn Reinbode, which is also a part of it. He's an artist and has been working with the studio for a long time, with many of our projects very integrated, and he's also a part of this. But this is for us a new opportunity to discuss the issues about the very serious problems we have today with our climate, and how can we as architects act with decent manners into this world, which is extremely scaring in a way.
To elaborate on how you describe our office, I think we've always been preoccupied with trying to fathom the whole aspect of our field, being the mind and the heart, connecting that together, and the hand, and this with the hand, that being very interested in materials and how construction structures are influence are integral part of our spaces, and obviously the realization that the place, the landscape, we've always had a very close collaboration with the site, and allowing the site to influence our projects, so we don't have like a corporate identity in our projects. Each project has its own identity, and I think this reflects on the exhibition as well. These two aspects of our work: this preoccupation with the materials, how they influence the experience, the atmosphere, and also the site specificness of the way that we approach the concept, the project that Marianne has introduced us to. And I would also say that Marianne has definitely allowed us to embark in a completely new experiment that is not something that we have tried before, and it's been a very enlightening experience for all of us, and not least the large amount of people that she has introduced in the concept development process that have helped us to develop the ideas of how to answer Hashim Sarkis's question, how will we live together?
Perfect. I mean, I loved the analogy you talked about how the hand and mind are connected, and that leads to the thematic of the exhibition and the project which you're doing at Biennale. Before we deep dive into it, one general, very generic question. You spelled connectedness with the hyphenation in the title. Is there any meaning to that?
Well, I think it's a way of playing with the visual aspects of it. So you don't read it as a normal word, but you can also read it as a picture, you could say. But of course, we're also playing with the thing that things are connected, and this sign sort of introduces that idea as well.
Of course, when you think of Venice, you do think of, you know, the canals, and water is a part of how one usually imagines Venice. So, and I know the water that's going to be in the installation is from the Venetian canals as well. So I just wanted to know if was utilizing that water part of using the context, or was it like, where was the water going to come from a general idea, or did it start with the water of Venice itself?
In the pavilion, we seek to make the circulation of water visible, because, of course, water is something that is fundamental. Life is depending on water. It exists everywhere on our planet in a dynamic, interrelated system that the Danish Pavilion also connects to. Water is invited in, and it is staged and sensed, and the flows of it in the pavilion is something that gives us opportunity to create spaces that really makes us feel the importance and sense this interrelatedness. We see this as a fundamental part of life and nature, and maybe the strongest matter. And in the pavilion, it's just a matter of understanding that we are a part of a big unified circuit, and you are part of it, and that's a very strong sign showing this by the water itself.
Why just water? Why not any other element? Which is also
yes, we had to start. You could say that we had these wonderful talks in the beginning, and we spoke about the Anthropocene age. We spoke about the fact that people have sort of distanced themselves from the actual crust that the world consists of, nature that is a very fragile, interconnected relation, and it could have been other materials as well. We spoke about other natural materials that could have been used, but water is the ultimate symbol of connectedness, as because it represents chaos, it represents love and life, and it has this wonderful ability to be staged in a pavilion like the one in Venice, to create an atmospheric feeling that can help people hopefully relate to this natural resource. And obviously, you asked about Venice. What Venice is obviously the elephant in the room, the water in Venice. But we did not want to directly, we did not want to bring Venice into the pavilion. We wanted to bring water as a bigger, on a bigger, larger perspective. and to use water as a kind of a circuit, a closed circuit in the pavilion, but it's not closed because it actually is fed by the water, the rainwater that lands in Venice on the roofs of the building. And we use that circuit to symbolize this very, very fragile resource that we have to look after and respect. So it's not from the canals we take the water, but we take it from the rain that falls on the roofs.
I just want to add to the very good things that Erik and Lene said, that there are some sort of natural elements that have been in the background for so many centuries that we have taken for granted. And one is air, for example, another one is water, and you can mention all of them. So in a way, it's time to put them in the foreground, because we cannot take this for granted anymore. And as Erik said, it could have been another natural element. It could have been earth, for example, but water has so much potential. It ranges from, one side being very sort of atmospheric, and it appeals to all the senses of touch, of smell, of hearing, and so on. And all the way to the other side, where it can be and is extremely political. It has such a wide range, and then, as Erik said, it's not the canals, but it's like it taps onto a global circuit. All the water which is on the globe has been here always. It melts, it drips, it freezes, it evaporates. It's just one big circuit. And in a way, the Danish Pavilion taps on to this circuit. So it's not like there is a circuit inside the exhibition and nothing outside. It's everywhere in a way. And of course, as Erik said, there is a big elephant in the room. Of course, it connects up to, but I think it does it in a very sharp and not romantic way. It connects up to the site, which is Venice, which is about fragility, water, weather, and human imagination. And I think there is a very good relation there too. Mm.
But perhaps we could explain what happens to the water, to explain that you have seen something that it's running on the floor. I think perhaps you have seen
the floor, then the pipes, and
that's right.
Because we've been stalking out on Instagram the Hope Garden, so yeah, we've seen the cycle a little bit. But yes, please, it would be wonderful if you all could take us through almost a little bit of a description of how that was planned as well.
Right. Well, you could say that all of these wonderful and important ideas about our resources, they also expanded into ideas about humility, respect, and sharing, and sharing with each other, and realizing that that water is a life-giving element, and it's also can be a threatening element. And this ambiguity, we wanted to express it in the pavilion. What we do, we collect water on the roofs. We do not turn on the tap water to make this water circuit. It's a self-sustaining circular system that collects rainwater, and this rainwater is rinsed, and then it is pushed through the exhibition in pipes along the walls and on the ceiling until it ends in a large water basin where we have a floating carpet, you could say, a floor. And from this basin, it spills over onto the floor and runs back to where it started. So when you come in, you see water on the floor and you see these pipes. And you're very curious about what is going on here, and this is and hopefully one can discover that it is actually a closed circuit, and this circuit we use also to water some plants that we use to brew tea. so that people can share and have interaction, social interaction with each other by drinking tea together. So that aspect is also present in the pavilion. It's not just a sensory. It's not just a sensory experience. It's also an experience that hopefully creates ultimate relaxation in a chaos of an exhibition situation, because people are very, very tired. People have been walking for several hours, and they need somewhere to chill and to reflect on larger issues.
And also, I mean, drinking the tea, doing that, the water floats through the visitors also,
Yes.
and your bodies become part of this circuit, you could say. And I also think it's important to say that this is not an exhibition about water. You can almost say that the water is used as an architectural element, because the buildings are there and the spaces are there, and the architects have worked with, you know, enhancing some different experiences in those spaces.
To add to that, Marianne, you said it very clearly. It's also about what Erik said in the first hand, that we take what is already there, and we were actually very, very keen on using the pavilion's potential, but maybe broadening up the spatial interconnectedness in another way, because it's very curious that the extension from the 60s has been added but not really integrated. So you always have the feeling of entering the Danish Pavilion by entering in the center, and you can go then left or right into two different spaces. So we asked the Biennale administration if we could actually change the whole series of spatial experiences going through the exhibition or going through the spaces in another way. So acting or entering in the one part very close to the main entrance, we actually get a series of spatial experiences that really connects with the outdoor experience, also of where are we, what is the essence of the place there actually, and also it connects the space in a quite new way, and we have in the middle there where the two buildings connect, we have this kind of breathing space where you actually have these servings of teas and the ceremony where you can understand that we are depending on each other. You have to actually wait for somebody to give you the tea, and you can also tap water, but somebody has to tap it while you use your cup because it's a little bit distant from each other. So we have actually staged all of the spatial experiences with a feeling of gathering or being depending on each other. And also in the Brahma hall, we actually staged the entering on the disconnected floor, the unstable floor, by entering small passages where you can't just enter without looking. If there's somebody coming against you, you really you have to step aside, and you have to see people in the eyes just to be related in some way, and all these things we have been talking about as a very important part of the exhibition. So it's really one-to-one experience, as we were asked in the curators staging the whole Biennale. We want to see one-to-one experiences. We don't want to have representations. We want to let the architecture talk.
This installation and exhibition of yours, when an audience comes in, and as Erik said, that there's connection between hand and heart and mind, and as you Marianne was describing, all this connected to the nature and Mother Nature. What is that one response you expect for people to, when they leave this when they come in and when they leave this pavilion of yours, what is that one response you wish to have from the audience, given the thematic of how how our intimacy with nature has changed over various life forms of humanity?
It's a more kind of an exhibition that does not have a solution, but probably has many questions. And what would be really nice response would be, well, there's something that we have to be aware of here, that there are some things that we are not in control of, and we have to realize that we are dependent on each other in a way. But as Lene said, we don't come with a solution. I don't think we bring a solution in the exhibition, because sometimes in the exhibition you have a wonderful climate solution for some technical solution for a problem. We more want to examine things and expose things and perhaps make people wonder.
So one of the Instagram posts actually had this statement, and I've quoted it as well, which was, it is not about dreaming of solutions, but about staying with the trouble. Because very often I think with exhibitions and installations about such topics, you find a disjoint from reality. So I just wanted to say that. I think Anmol, or sorry, Marianne, you wanted to comment on that as well?
Yes, no, it's nice that you noticed that post, because this is quite central, I think. And as Erik said, I mean, of course, we need solutions, inventions, and so many things in that direction in order to deal with our situation right now. But this is not the gain or the target of the exhibition. It is a discussion, and it is kind of a reflection, you could say, that if we are able to focus and feel and reflect on this connectedness, maybe that's a very good first step before finding solutions. And we have been very inspired by the idea of the critical zone, which comes from sort of natural sciences, but now are discussed in many fields. And I think Bruno Latour has written a lot about it. But as Erik also said before, there is like a little crust around the Earth. It's very, very thin. It goes a few hundred meters up in the air and the same into the ground. And this is where life is. And everything is interconnected there. Plants, animals, humans, everything. And we have been so used to thinking ourselves as outside this. There is us and there's life over there, or nature over there. But I mean, we breathe the oxygen that they produce, and they need the nitrogen or whatever it's called that we, exhale. And we are completely intertwined, and we would not survive without them, and vice versa. And I think this is a feeling and a reflection that is very, very crucial in order to move forward, instead of just finding new solutions in a more modernistic way.
But of course, it is a balance, because and we are obviously technology. We are dependent on technology to solve many of the problems that we have. So of course we have to do something in that way. But it doesn't work if we don't learn to respect the fragile situation that we're in, the lack of understanding that when we do something, we influence something else that we don't really know. So I don't know, it's kind of like a male-female thing for me. It's a typical male reaction to find a solution. And sorry if I'm doing something wrong here. When I think it's great to have the other side of the coin, to discuss the other side of the coin, that it's not necessarily the technical solution that will solve everything.
So my question is with respect to the pavilion itself. I sense a very distinct sort of materiality within the pavilion. So there's water. I see there's some through the images I see there's some fabric. Of course, there's the pipes that is supposed to show how the water circulates. Then there's the floor, and then there's a lot of open space. So there's a lot of tangible, intangible material. There's a lot of tactility, and there's a lot of visual connection with the material. So if you could just talk about if the materiality of the whole pavilion is supposed to be a statement in itself, or does it meld into the whole sensorial part of it?
I think you could say that the choice of materials is an attempt to emphasize the way that the water is staged in the pavilion. We have the pavilion, as Lene said, consists of two different buildings, one from the 30s, one from the 50s. The one from the 50s has these more intimate spaces, and the one from the 30s are more classical building. And the spaces in these buildings inform how we want to use the water. And the materials that emphasize the water are chosen. For example, we have a concrete, a ferroconcrete floor where the water spills on, and it's made deliberately by hand that absorbs the water and emphasizes where there is water and where there's no water, and almost looks like a beach, the wave patterns that you have when on the beach. So this is an attempt to emphasize the feeling of the water's reaction on the floor, you could say. We have fabrics in different spaces. We have one fabric which is in a cubic space, which is suspended from the ceiling, and where there's water spraying on top of it from the circuit. And this creates a wonderful convex shape that compresses the space. And at the same time, the water drips on this sheet, white sheet, that almost looks like a cloud because it's semi-transparent. And it drips in the middle onto the floor and creates this incredible soundscape in the space. We have another space with fabric along the walls that touches the basin of the water basin on the floor. And in time, we are quite excited to see how this will react, this material with the water in time during the run of the 6-month exhibition period, whether it will become a little moldy or so the reaction of how water reacts to material is one way of showing it this way. Then we have these quite extravagant pink sofas, sofa cushions in the space that are set in this space with this floating floor, and this kind of ambiguity it creates of a sense of being in home, where you can relax on pink sofas. And then right next door you have this floating floor that has this uneasiness and associations to something that is not stable, you could say. Then we have a lot of wood, because wood is also a warm material, and it's untreated, deliberately untreated, to give this rough feeling.
I think there is a very clear element of lack of control, you could say, or not mastering everything. And it is not an element that has been ended now, and then now we are in control, but we went through that process and everything went okay. It's happening now, and we will see what will happen the next 6 months when the exhibition is open. How will the water influence the architectural space and the materials? We don't know, but this is part of life, you could say.
The life of this exhibition post Venice, and if it has one, as a site-specific installation. Is there a possibility of adapting this idea?
Well, I think it's quite impossible to redo the exhibition somewhere else. Of course, you could copy the sort of system, so to speak, but it's so site-specific that it doesn't really make sense to repeat somewhere else in that same form anyway. But I think that we have had a lot of discussions about, the influence on the world, just bringing a lot of material to Venice and taking it back again, and so the whole industry of transporting and so on. So we have been quite engaged with the idea of using secondhand material and trying to reuse it in other connections afterwards. So this is part of it, you could say.
But the idea is so strong that you could probably recreate the exhibition, but in a completely different form.
Yes.
That was adapted to the new spaces where it was staged.
So you could do the same pavilion in another way with the essence of things that is engaging you.
I also did want to know if there was, if that was deliberate, to be able to first see, like as one of the first elements you see is this, black pipe, which is carrying something, which we all know carries something we need.
Yes, I think exposure is very important here. In a way, it's there are so many systems, local, global systems, and technology and transportation, and all this is part of architecture. And I think in order to move on in new directions and ask new questions and develop new languages, maybe the very first step is exposure, is describing the world as it is now. And then it's more possible to discuss it. Just scratch any wall surface in any modern building, white painted, very clean, very calm, and you will find so much stuff behind that wall. And so exposing the pipes here is deliberate. Show it. This is what we use. This is what we are surrounded by, and we are also dependent on it. And technology, maybe we should incorporate it more and be more playful with it instead of just hiding and not knowing what's really going on.
Yes, and since water is the main actor, we want people to realize what is happening with that water, and to hopefully think about where does that water come from.
We had an initial process of discussing with and about different philosophers, scientists, authors, artists, psychologists, and so on. We had a series of workshops with a lot of different people discussing the idea of connectedness. Because if you talk about this idea, you cannot, just focus on one or two or three areas, because everything is connected. This is also a way of saying that we need the specialized knowledge that we have built up for centuries, but we also need these knowledge areas to talk together. And following that idea, we chose not to make a traditional catalog for an exhibition. Normally you have like a little essay on the exhibition and a portrait of the studio and so on. We said, let's make a little work in itself, which sort of tries to encompass the whole broader idea of connectedness. So we asked about 100 people all over the world to make a contribution. And first of all, it's people from all different kinds of fields. They all got a word, and one of the words is, of course, architecture, but it's everything. And it could have been more, but of course we had to limit ourselves. So it's glacier and geosocial classes and food and tenderness and the Anthropocene, of course, and many, many, many words. And we asked big names, big thinkers, and smaller, younger people, also in order to state that we should break up some of the traditional hierarchies. And then I also ask everybody to contribute with the language they feel comfortable with. So, for example, artists and some of the poets and so on, they responded with the language they know. So some of the contributions don't have any words, for example. And this is also a statement about saying that we might need to invent new languages or use different forms of languages in order to move forward. So it's like an incomplete dictionary or encyclopedia of the Anthropocene. And some of the statements don't align. But this is also on purpose, because you cannot just work with one vision of how everything should be. There are clashes, there are difficult things, and maybe sometimes you see new connections that you didn't really anticipate. And yeah, so this is the idea behind the book.
We look forward to reading more on the book. It sounds interesting, and thank you all for being I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. We normally ask one question at the end of the interview, which we forgot, which is, how would you like to stir up the future?
Yeah.
You'll see soon.
We will.